The idea of a world commonwealth has to be established as a citron of political institutions and also as the citron of general conduct in hundreds of millions of brains. It has to dominate education everywhere in the world. When that end is achieved, then the world state will be achieved. H.G. Wells, The Salvaging of Civilization. That was in 1921. We must be prepared to see an association of nations in conference growing into an organic system of world controls for world affairs and the keeping of the world's peace, or we must be prepared for a continuation of war. H.G. Wells, Washington, and the Riddle of Peace, 1922. It, a new world order, needs only that the government of Britain, the United States, France, Germany, and Russia should get together in order to set up an effective control of currency, credit, production, and distribution. That is to say, an effective dictatorship of prosperity for the whole world. The other 60-odd states would have to join or accommodate themselves to the overruling decisions of these major powers. That is H.G. Wells' Journalism and Prophecy. And the quote was first published in 1931. And finally, a world revolution to a higher social order, a world order, to utter downfall lies before us all. And that was first published in 1939. Again, that was H.G. Wells, the author of the famous book, The Time Machine, The Island of Dr. Moreau, and The Invisible Man. And this is AllMinucOne. Please, folks, if you like my content, hit that like button, share, and subscribe. So why am I bringing up Wells? Well, much like what I always talk about, there are people around the globe who are in elite positions of power, of money, and authority, who would like to tell you how to live your life and dictate everything. And that is not in any way, shape, or form American. In fact, the American spirit is based off of that man, an individual, can dictate his own destiny. Once again, I will say this up front in this video. This is why I am supporting Donald Trump. Unless he is some covert agent of the deep state, of the globalist, he seems to me to be their adversary in every single way, shape, and form. Now, many people, if you discuss these things, will call you a conspiracy theorist and all kinds of other nonsense. Most of those people are regressive leftists. Those same people, as the president just recently was sick, still is, I guess, were citing all kinds of crazy conspiracies about him. They're all the Russia and Ukraine gate people. The very people that are so blind and so idiotic that they believe what MSNBC and CNN tells them, as well as the majority of the legacy media. You have to understand, folks, anything that I say, yes, there might be a tidbit of speculation in it. But anything that I say, I have documentation and evidence for. And most of the things that those people say, the evidence is nil. And if they do provide evidence, it is based on very, very weak circumstances, very weak studies, and the like. So, this is H.G. Wells's The Open Conspiracy. You can find this online. It's an easy read. He talks about the world order growing. I happen to have a copy of it here. I've had it for quite a while. He also wrote a book called The New World Order. But again, I'm bringing all of this up because I today wanted to do something a little different, and I wanted to play you this little video and lay some commentary over it. And this video is called The Great Reset Explained, and this is from Neil McCoy Ward. You should check out his channel. He does essentially a lot of stuff talking about monetary policy. He understands the monetary crisis. He understands the fiat currency. He understands that there are people around the world who want a one world currency and a one world government, as H.G. Wells suggested right here. He literally said in 1931 that they would have an effective dictatorship of prosperity, that there would be a effective control of currency, credit production, and distribution. Folks, this is not conspiracy. This is real life, and this hurts you. It strips your freedom, and we're going to talk about that as this video goes along. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and watch this. I might skip over a few parts. I will say there are some images here, as he put at viewer discretion, that may be disturbing to some, but they're not the worst. Of course, we have war and all of its horrors.
Very strong shaking. I think we need to get under the desk.
All right, we're going to go to break. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
Wow.
An unprecedented disaster, spiraling flames in all directions.
Hello from the World Economic Forum in Geneva.
Hi and welcome to the channel today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Neil McCoy Ward, and firstly I want to let you know that this video today, this production, is not politically motivated. I've tried to keep it as neutral and unbiased and factual as I possibly can. But of course I appreciate all of you subscribers who have warned me against creating this video, and that I understand the risks are.
And he's speaking here of, he's being apolitical, which he totally is. Unless you are one of those people that think everything's political. And he's speaking that, he could get in trouble with YouTube or anyone else because you're not allowed to say these things on big tech media. You're not. Now, you might get away with it. You might get by with it, but they don't like it because they're part of it. The tech censorship runs very deep, and they're also against Donald Trump, which should tell you a lot. And all the people that think, hey, all these people are against Donald Trump, the big government and big tech and blah, 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 they must be right. You must like being a slave. That's all I have to say to you.
Of it being taken down and censorship. Reset investors involved in this entire initiative. What is the fourth industrial revolution? And finally, I'll be wrapping up with a finance aspect, a finance prediction on what I think is with the US.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead here, guys.
Let me know to it.
When we look at the tremendous challenge which we have in creating this great reset.
So let me just start by explaining the key player in the entire process here. This is the architect of the World Economic Forum, Professor Klaus Schwab. He is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum.
About the Great Reset.
This great reset, mean a great reset.
I think the world which we want to create with the Great Reset.
So he will get into this in the video, but the Great Reset is this. It is a reset of a global economic system. It is a one world economy based on a one world monetary system. Currently, the United States holds that. They floated around the ideas, and you guys can research this, of the Amero back in the early 2000s. It was very unpopular. The European Union started the euro for this very reason, to circulate amongst Europeans. seems to make sense in a lot of ways. But what happens is when you essentially lose diversity and you centralize everything, the reality is that you make things weaker and also more totalitarian. So the forum engages in the foremost political, business, cultural, and leaders society of the globe. And
it's the final day of the World Economic Forum in Davos.
So for those of you that don't know, Davos is a small town in Switzerland where the elite meet every single year to discuss global issues.
The annual gathering of political and business leaders has focused on climate change.
In California, where dozens of wildfires are now raging out of control.
Tonight, the Creek Fire is being called an unprecedented disaster. The wildfires burning throughout the West are especially destructive this year. Scientists say they're fueled by climate change.
I did a video on this, if you guys don't know, just a few weeks ago. And there's no evidence that's fueled by climate change whatsoever. Scientists like to say all kinds of bunk to scare you, or scientists, the experts, anonymous sources, right? Essentially, it's forest mismanagement. And we know that. There's plenty of documentation on that.
Fires now ripping through several states, leaving a path.
Forum's promotional video to explain what is Davos.
Davos is about a lot more than just money. It's about economies and how we structure them to help the poor, the wealthy, and everyone in between. It's about improving the state of the world. I mean, that's literally the motto. And proof of point, you'll see more trade unionists here than you will central bankers, more scientists than economists.
Now,
He's about to hit on this, but there aren't any trade unionists or economists there. There might be some economists, but essentially the people that are there are bankers. They're bankers, or they're very, very wealthy people in positions of power, like the royalty of England.
Do need to pull them up on this part of the video, because from looking at the partnership list and the investor list, it does tend to look as though this is the 0.1% of the world's elite who is in attendance at Davos. So who pays for Davos? Well, according to the website, this is the world's most significant business entities who foot the bill. The forum offers different levels of membership and partnership. Now look at these fees. The membership fees range from 60,000 to 600,000. So let's just convert this in Swiss francs. That's 65,500 US dollars to 657,500 US.
Can any of you afford that so you can participate in this global economic forum? When I talk about global organizations essentially taking away our sovereignty, or President Trump doesn't typically speak to this directly, but when he does speak of these things, this is what they're talking about. I'm not going to sit here like Alex Jones and scream about aliens and demons and whatever else. But there's just because he is extremely hyperbolic and a bit of a showman and whatever else he is, a little crazy perhaps, doesn't mean that some of the things that he says aren't true. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the guy for various reasons, but, you know, regardless, when he's pointing to these things, you can't completely dismiss what he's saying. You have to do your own research, and there's a reason why he has such a big following.
US dollars. So I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound as though that would just be the average person in attendance. But let's look at the partnership list then here. We have everyone from MasterCard to Microsoft. These are some big companies that you will know straight away. We also have in attendance some more controversial.
I want to make a note here as well. Just remember this. Things like MasterCard, PayPal, whomever else, pay systems. When there are people speaking out who they don't like, they immediately do not allow them to bank anymore. They don't allow them to use money. This is important. This was warned in the Bible, in the book of Revelations, the mark of the beast. Now, I don't think the mark of the beast is a physical mark personally. That's a thing to get into a whole nother time. But we've seen it historically, time and time again. Whoever may buy or sell, unless you worship, you have to worship what this is. And this is secular humanism and global elitism / communism for everyone else, or socialism for everyone else, however you want to differentiate it. The reality is, if you say things and you get on this system, you get in with this that they don't like, they'll cut you off. Now, we've seen this in a simple example in the U.S. with a cake baker who was targeted specifically because they were Christians, who said they wouldn't make a cake with certain homosexual artistry on it, and then they were sued. And they said, I'll sell you any other cake, but I'm just not going to do that specific thing. And then they were sued. And they had to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And their arguments also were quite poor in the Supreme Court, but that's a whole other issue. My point is that is a freedom of religion issue. That's a freedom of expression issue. That's a freedom of association issue. You can't force me to do things for you. If you force me to work for you, you are a slaver. They makes you my master, and I am your slave. And I can tell you, I'm a slave of no man. No man on this earth.
Organizations such as the Soros Fund Management. So this is George Soros's company. BP, British Petroleum, is another one. We also have Bayer in attendance. So BP is an energy company. Bayer, of course, International Chemicals. They purchase Monsanto. So the next question is, who are the people involved in this initiative? So let's take a look at a few most famous, well-known ones now then.
I think an epidemic, either naturally caused or intentionally caused, is the most likely thing
2017, folks.
To cause, say, 10 million excess deaths. And that it's pretty surprising how little preparedness there is for it.
My question is why is Bill Gates worried about that when he himself says the earth is overpopulated and we have to do something about that? Can you explain that contradiction to me? Why does he care? Seems to be he cares so he can just randomly vaccinate people.
Very pleased to welcome George Soros, billionaire philanthropist and former hedge fund manager. And today we're going to discuss the difference between natural phenomenon and social phenomenon, a big idea, Mr. Soros, that has really guided you through life.
Well, it's my pleasure.
George Soros's dinner at Davos is a bit of an institution at this event. He usually comes out with strong criticism of something. So George Soros really, using his platform here at Davos to speak to those, rich and famous who...
Now, George Soros is a philanthropist, but in what sense? He owns an organization called the Open Society. We know, we can trace, there are records, we can track much of his funding towards things like migrant caravans and to the BLM movement and Antifa and whatever else. He wants a one world government. He calls that the Open Society. That's open border stuff. He has worked with the Koch brothers. I'm giving you guys food here if you're on the left. The Koch brothers, who I don't think are that horrible, but he has worked with them about having open borders. Guys, I'm not sitting here saying he's the only player or he's doing this in some sort of malevolent way, or at least from what he believes. But I do know he has a interesting past, and he does obviously want a one world system. And again, without decentralization, you get tyranny. You also get frailty. It's a system that's easier to control by the elites, but also easier to break, which means mass poverty throughout the world.
Come to the World Economic Forum. We know that he's, in the past, has been a major donor to the Democratic...
I consider the Trump administration a danger to the world. But
he considers the Trump administration a danger to the world. Those people out there who think that Trump is in league with these people, I don't know what to tell you, folks. It seems to me it's quite the opposite. In fact, I would suggest that I'm not telling you how to vote how you wish, but I would suggest that you vote for Donald Trump, and maybe that would help protect us, at least for a little bit longer, against the incursion of these people. There will be, unless there are certain actions taken, there will be a large market crash in the near future. It is easy to see. We just pumped another $3 trillion of debt into our government through corporate bailouts. Now, this guy, what's his channel? Neil McCoy Ward. This guy, he actually has several videos on the crisis that is coming. Now, I've been following this stuff for a long time, since at least before or around the 2008 market crash. I was always skeptical at the time of the housing bubble and things. And I had family members telling me, go buy a house. You can buy a house. They'll give you a loan for a $250,000 house. And I'm like, yeah, I make $40,000 a year. I don't think that's going to work out. This is the stuff that I made a personally responsible choice, regardless of what outside forces were telling me, and regardless of what the government was trying to do, because on an intrinsic, instinctive level, I knew something. I knew something was fishy about it. I remember getting out of the military, or right before I went in the military, or something like that, the housing prices, and I watched them triple in just a few years. It was insanity. So, again, think about the things that these people do that actually cause greater harm in the end. And, of course, the dum-dums out there listen, because you had people like Chuck Schumer going, well, we need to make sure that every single person can own a home. No, you don't. In fact, I like renting. I've only owned one home in my life, and I don't actually technically own it because I'm mortgaging it. But that's not, neither here nor there. Renting's great. I don't have to worry about if my water heater breaks. I don't have to worry about if my air conditioner goes down. I don't have to worry about if the refrigerator breaks. I don't have to worry about a dozen and a half things. And I've been very good about picking places to rent. So, in any case, just realize that these people will sell you things. They'll tell you things. Oh, well, you can do this and you can do that. And what they're doing is they're giving you a handout, and you're too weak-willed and too small-minded to understand that, because you're afraid to make it on your own. You're afraid to stand up and be an individual. And therefore, you'll fall into all this trap, and this will only lead to utter destruction, I guarantee.
But I regard it as a purely temporary phenomenon that will disappear in 2020.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path.
History would look at this crisis as the great opportunity for reset.
Now let me just interject here, not just because she looked down as she made that statement, but this is Kristalina Georgieva. She's a Bulgarian economist, if you don't know who she is, and the managing director of the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund.
International Monetary Fund, folks, another globalist organization.
Now, previously to this, she was the chief executive at the World Bank, and she was also the vice president of the European Commission before that. So just notice these titles for a moment. Managing director, chief executive. What many people don't realize is that the IMF and the World Bank are not charities. They are also not government organizations. These are private institutions. So this is a point that is never mentioned, and I don't think most people realize. And wherever the IMF and World Bank go, there is always a lot of controversy, as well as mass protests against both the IMF and the World Bank, who make loans to developing or struggling countries.
By the way, folks, all of these organizations are in league with China, the WHO, all that stuff.
The Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental to building the future we need.
It's one versus many, man versus nature, and the unfortunate foundation is long-term versus short-term.
There's no doubt that the very survival of the human race requires us to act.
And then we need to couple that with new initiatives to equip more people with the digital skills they'll need not just to have a tech job, but a job that is increasingly tech-enabled and almost...
Now, this is important. He's talking about not just a tech job, but tech-enabled. See, what they've done to some degree now is they've said, well, you can't go anywhere because of a cold that is lethal if you have pneumonia and the flu on top of it, and heart disease and renal failure, and you're morbidly obese. If you have all those things, this cold will kill you. Therefore, we have to destroy all of the economies. Excuse me. So the point here is this. When the people who are part of this World Economic Forum are speaking about these things, and the rest of the world, the mom and pop stores, the shops, are going under, what they're saying is let the power conglomerate into our hands, us big corporations that can take this hit. And then on top of that, this tech thing, it's going to be important later because they're going to move into the fourth industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution is this merger of transhumanism and money and economy. That you are truly going to be a slave at that point. So there are debt slaves. We're all actually part of this debt slave thing. But, what are they going to do? Because they don't have actual physical control of you. But they want to use certain technology to basically make you a slave within their system. See, folks, money is a very important thing if you understand money. A gold standard allows men and women to trade based on the weight of the gold, the value of the gold, or a note saying you can exchange the gold. And that gives power to the people. It spreads it out. It decentralizes it. When you centralize a monetary system, what happens when the person is cut off from the monetary system? Well, they starve or they go to a black market. And that's what will happen. Capitalism will always thrive. There will be a black market. Problem is black markets tend to be expensive. They also create a lot of crime because you don't have the protection of police agencies. But I digress. Let's move on.
Every part of the economy.
The next time someone tells us that tackling climate change is either too costly or too difficult, I think we need to remind them and remind ourselves of what just...
Now, he makes a really, not him, but the producer of this makes a really salient point in a second about this.
Is happening right now.
So this is Bernard Looney. He's the CEO of BP, or British Petroleum. He took over in around about February, March, I believe, of this year, 2020, and he worked his way up through the ranks of BP. So BP, this is the irony of this, were found by numerous studies to be one of the biggest contributors to climate change in the world over recent decades. So I do find it quite ironic that we are receiving a lecture on climate change here from the CEO of BP.
Let me correct Neil here. It's not climate change, it's emissions. We have to understand the difference, folks, because the climate will change. It will always change. It will go up, it will go down. What he's talking about specifically is emissions and the belief that emissions is driving the climate towards a catastrophe. That's something else.
And that he's somehow involved, or the company somehow involved, in the renewable energy aspect of this. The other person that I'm somewhat perplexed by is the CEO of MasterCard. So again, another financial institution being given a voice here. There seems to be a lot of finance involved with this initiative, which is supposed to be around green, sustainability, etc. So overall then, how does this affect you? Well, I've gone to the painstaking trouble of watching hours and hours of these World Economic Forum briefings and live streams and Q&A sessions so that I can actually get to the bottom of a lot of it. And I've just pulled out a few key points here that I'll now play for you.
The crisis has triggered a precipitous rise in levels of unemployment. Unemployment creates strong societal risks, and we have already seen the impact it is having in terms of social unrest worldwide.
So one of the main reasons why we have social welfare systems isn't to take care of poor people. It really isn't. They've done studies on this in the past. what they're doing is they're regulating the poor. There's actually a book by that title that speaks about this. And through government welfare, government aid systems, unemployment, food stamps, all those things, what they're doing is they're buying off the people that don't do so well or people that might be lazy to not go out and riot and do these kind of things. Because there's a thing called the Gini coefficient, right? And if the Gini coefficient on a scale of 1 goes above 0.4, you tend to get instability. And what the Gini coefficient measures is the economic inequality of a society. So, and the Gini coefficient can actually be used for a lot of different things. We see the same phenomenon very specifically with males to females, and we have that issue right now as well. Excuse me, guys. I don't know why I'm phlegmy all of a sudden to start speaking, but it happens. So, anyways, we can see that. So right now in China, there's a big problem because they had the one-child policy. They favored men or boys over girls. Therefore, there's a surplus of men and lesser women. We see this a lot in Western society where men are essentially being feminized and women are encouraged to go out and, just sleep with anybody and have no morals about it. Now, I don't think that that's the majority of society, but that's a big part. But then there's this other part of society of men that are very much disenchanted with life. They don't feel like they can go anywhere because we've spent all this time propping women up and putting them on a special pedestal. And like, again, I don't care what you ridiculous leftists say out there. I believe in balance. I believe in like a cooperation between the sexes. I believe in egalitarianism. I don't believe in supremacy. And the left does. The left is a completely supremacist movement. Always has been. Communism's a supremacist movement. Fascism's a supremacist movement. Feminism is absolutely a supremacist movement. And I don't care what anyone says. We can talk about back in the days of Christine Hoff Sommer and Camille Paglia, where they just wanted to be able to go outside without chaperones and stuff. That makes sense. But now we have women saying, I can't go outside and feel safe. And it's like, well, buy a gun, learn some self-defense, or have a man with you. I don't know what to tell you, lady. Well, just teach men not to rape. Yeah, good luck teaching evil out of the world. That is Plato's Republic, folks. It's never going to happen. Evil is a problem in the world, and it will always exist. And people that say that, they've never looked at real evil in the eyes. And I can tell you for a fact that I have. So, in any case, let's get back to this.
Facing a dramatic situation in which an increasing level of citizens will face deep poverty issues.
American migrant caravan in
migration to richer countries.
It's been called the largest Central American migrant caravan in decades.
But these migrant caravans, again, they have no need to travel. What they're doing is they're being encouraged to travel here or over in Europe. They're being encouraged to go there to have economic opportunity. And again, lefties, you don't know what you're talking about, because the reality is what actually happens is that these people get here and there aren't jobs for them. There aren't things available for them. And then what they do is they wind up in poverty. Then they start draining the system because they get on welfare. And yes, they get on welfare. It is quite well known. People on the left like to deny this. It is a fact. They can get on welfare. They can do it through their children, but often not even through their children. So there are issues. This is why legal immigration is important, because it helps us regulate and control things so we can look at the data instead of this untethered flow of things. If you're going to have a society that has a welfare system, which I don't agree with, but let's just say we're going to have that society that has a welfare system, you cannot have open borders immigration.
Is that it has acted as an accelerator of existing risks. So things that were already emerging a few a few years ago are now.
The numbers show every sign not of decline.
Do you expect this to be to happen on a large scale? It's going to be pretty shocking at the end of the day when we look at it and see the number of bankruptcies and business closures that happened. A lot happened during the financial.
I want you to understand that too, and they're looking at this and the Dow Jones average and everything going up. She's talking about business closures and all that. Again, what does this do? This puts everything in the hands of a smaller and smaller group. There is a global oligarchy, and the people who, I'm not saying that you don't have chances to get rich. Like Jeff Bezos started, with a very small business out of his garage. He became very wealthy. But the reality is that Amazon has a lot of power and control. He owns the Washington Post, folks. I mean, that is influence. And again, I don't know if he's an evil man or anything else, but it has nothing to do with, do they think that they're evil? They probably think that they're doing well and they're doing good. But, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Financial crisis, a lot more are going to happen because of the COVID-19 crisis.
We know store closures are picking up already, but this is a very different phenomenon. It's going to have huge ripple effects, I would imagine, on the labor market, on the shopping malls, on towns, on budget.
So you're going to see a falling out of number of stores. You're going to excel.
Open on the right.
All right, we already know that. Here's a mall. There's a florist open. Everything else is shut down.
Here.
And by the way, folks, there's no reason why any businesses should not be open right now.
Level that we're at.
1990, we had a blip. We had a blip in 1987. There's 2008. And then it just goes straight up like a rocket. It goes straight up like a rocket.
Well, this is all due to the COOF, right? And forced lockdowns.
That is seasonally.
The ideology that has prevailed over the past 15 years, which was predicated upon the government having as little role as possible, is changing radically. And moving forward, you should expect the government to take a more active role in the economy and in societal issues.
In the whole question of vaccine.
Let's get back to that real quick. He said taking a more active role in society and economic issues, meaning centralized authority. Centralization of the economy comes down to a socialistic system, a fascistic system, or a communistic system. They're all brothers and sisters, folks. They all are essentially the same thing. And in the United States and most of the West, we do have a form of soft fascism. It exists. I'm not saying that we're Hitler or Mussolini or Franco, but it does exist, and that there is this centralized control. There is this funny money banking system. We don't have a free market in the United States. We have a mostly free market. You can't have a centralized bank and say you have a free market. Like, these things aren't capitalism. Lefties, this isn't capitalism. This is controlled economies. Not the same thing. Free trade is capitalism.
About the vaccine itself, we don't know yet. For example, is one dose sufficient? Do you need 2 doses? In what?
I'll tell you what we know. There's never been a vaccine for any sort of coronavirus ever. By the way, the seasonal flu vaccine is only about 30 to 40% effective. So let's get our heads straight about this, folks. You're going to get the COOF. It's going to happen. Let's move on. I'm actually really happy that the president got this, because he recovered well. He recovered quickly. It shows that it's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. Don't get me wrong. He does have and does get special treatment. At the same time, though, he then puts out a tweet saying, we cannot fear this thing. You have all these people in the legacy media, the same people that would love to see the plans of the 4th Industrial Revolution, the Great Reset, go into place. All these people in MSNBC, CNN, CBS, ABC, whatever, they're just, how disrespectful, how horrible, people have died. Well, I know people have died. A lot of those people probably were going to die. Didn't matter if the COOF came or not. But let's say they didn't. They didn't die of the COOF alone. Only, I think, 9,000 people of the COOF alone had passed away. So if you have a moderate level of health and you catch this, it is highly, highly unlikely that you will pass away. Here's the other thing. In all cases, I've talked about this numerous times, there's a huge spike in the rate of death and immediately drops off. Immediately drops off. Globally, around the world, in all cases, around the world, the most affected people were in nursing homes, largely in New Jersey, New York, and Michigan in the United States, where they put people into those nursing homes, put people who weren't supposed to be in nursing homes. In one case in Michigan, there was a young man who had some issues and decided to beat up an old man over it. And I haven't looked this up, but I heard the old man later on committed suicide. You know, they caught the young man, fortunately, but I mean, what are we doing, folks? Right? Stop voting for this nonsense. Think for yourself. Be prepared. Live on your own. Be free. Stop asking people to do things for you. I'm not saying you can't ask for help. That's another issue. But stop saying, I shouldn't use the word ask, but stop saying, you need to do this for me. You need to supply this for me. You need to do this. You need to do that. My Lord, all of you folks that believe that, I wish I could have a time machine and drop you off 300 years ago, where society was completely different and people had to be self-reliant. And also were gravely, gravely more in danger than anyone is today, at least in the Western world, and impoverished, greatly impoverished.
The cut which we have now is much too strong in order not to leave traces. So this is really a test case where for the capability of global cooperation, we are at a turning point of humankind. I think we should not underestimate the historical significance of.
He was saying this is a test case, how we can work together. I just want to play a little bit more because I don't want to keep this too much longer. But we're going to go up here to the Fourth Industrial Revolution and what that's all about.
Written by Professor Klaus Schwab back in January of 2017, where in this book he talks about such topics as human augmentation. He also discusses neurotechnological brain enhancements and genetic editing. And people keep saying to me, no, Neil, you're talking nonsense. These things will never happen. We're 30, 40 years away from ever having this technology.
Except for Neuralink. Also, think about the stuff Joe Rogan talks about, transhumanism. Guys, there's all kinds of people out there who talk about this stuff. You just have your eyes closed. You don't pay attention. Me, I'm a freaking information absorption machine. So, not that I know everything, but I have my interest and I pay attention to a lot of stuff. And frankly, that is what they're doing. The gene editing. If you look at the movie like Gattaca with Ethan Hawke and what's his name? Doesn't matter. But anyways, the movie Gattaca talks about this, shows this. This is like nothing new. It is the idea that we're going to live forever. It's kind of this idea of the Garden of Eden where the serpent tells the woman, hey, yeah, well, you surely won't die. You know, well, if you eat this fruit, you'll have knowledge and then you'll be like God. And that's what all this is about, folks. Like those stories, as Jordan Peterson would say, are very deep, deeper than you realize.
Well, take a look at this.
So in terms of getting a link, like I said, it's essentially you open a piece of skull, you remove about a coin-sized piece of skull, and then the robot inserts the electrodes. So this is our surgical robot. And if you look closely, you will see that if the electrodes are inserted very carefully, that there's no bleeding. So what the beeps you're hearing are real-time signals from the Neuralink in Gertrude's head. So we said, well, what if we do 2 Neuralink implants? So it's possible to have multiple links in your head and have them all be sending out signals and be working well. In terms of additional brain reading activity, when we have, say, one of our pigs on a treadmill, pig on a treadmill. It's funny concept, really.
So this technology already exists today, and just look at the sort of acceleration from last year to what it is today. This was unveiled just last week by Elon Musk, who of course is the founder of Tesla, the car company, as well as SpaceX. So this is the Neuralink company that he also owns. And you can just see the advancements from last year to what is in existence right now today. And even with the size of this implant now, Elon actually likens this to an old-fashioned computer versus a smartphone today. So he does say that this will get smaller and smaller over time.
And this is the important thing. This wheel here, he's going to cover very quickly, is very important. Because with Neuralink, what they're really trying to do here is they're trying to interconnect everybody. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in people's minds. And I don't want people in my mind. Because, again, I value my freedom. I value my privacy highly. Not that I won't tell you everything. You sit down and have a beer with me, guys. I'll spill my guts just about anything. I'm a very actually open person, but I'm also a very private person because, there's just certain things you have to be able to hold to your heart. You have to keep for yourself. And this is also an interesting concept too, because it essentially, if you get into like the worlds of cyberpunk and whatever else, it's a ghost in the shell type concept where you can actually eventually hack into somebody else's brain and grab their information. I think that having a smartphone, I have learned to cope with having a smartphone and not being addicted to it. But I think that having a smartphone initially is one of the first processes and steps of making humanity cybernetic, where we become cyborgs, if you would, transhuman, and that this thing is attached to us all the time. We're constantly on it. I really had to learn how to navigate social media and all of these other things that this novelty calls to you through dopamine signaling and whatever else. And these social media networks actually design their apps and their networks to trigger these things for us. That's why we have like buttons and whatever else. Our video games are the same way. I mean, the other year I had left my job and went back to school and was doing that full time and was living on some savings. And I ended up spending so much money on this stupid little game on my phone. And I don't normally even game, but I didn't have any companionship at the time. I hadn't met my wife yet. And that became an addiction. And I probably spent $1,000 or more on this stupid little pay-to-play phone game. And it wasn't always pay-to-play, but you get to a level and you get stuck. And that's not good, folks. That's not good. So I guess I'm going to play, I don't know, another minute or so of this, and then we'll wrap up here. And you guys, if you want to check this out, again, it's Neil McCoy Ward. If you can't see that, I'll enlarge this real quick. So, whoop. Good enough. Neil McCoy Ward, and let's go back here. And let's just play this little bit about the Neuralink. That's what you get, guys, because I do everything in one take. I might as well just start doing this stuff live.
Something as simple as drones. You can see the drones here. Justice and law is another topic. Also AI and robotics.
Beings being some sort of natural concept is really going to change. The idea of human
Own words, what they mean by the fourth industrial revolution.
The very idea of human being some sort of natural concept is really going to change.
Our bodies will be so high tech, we won't be able to really distinguish between what's natural and what's artificial.
Okay, so let's wrap up then with the finance side on this now then. So although there isn't a lot of content or coverage on the financial side,
No, I find that interesting. There's not a lot of content or coverage on the financial side. I wonder why. They don't want you to know what's really going on there. But all these other things, this is an interactive map, by the way, of the fourth industrial revolution from the World Economic Forum, if I'm not mistaken. But all the other things, folks, that's all about, what you can do if you have this really cool implant in your brain and whatever else. But the reality is they want to hook you up. They want to be able to see where you go, what you do, what you're looking at, what you think, and you already do this with this thing right here. They know when you're using the bathroom, when you're making a bowel movement. That is no joke, because you take that with you, and there's data constantly being streamed. One of the best things you can do is get this away from you from time to time. For sure, I use mine a lot. I love my smartphone because it allows me to read a lot or to watch things constantly, to constantly be informed, inundated with information. I like that. But, I'm looking for, say, a gun to build, or looking for fitness equipment or whatever, and I start getting inundated with ads. I get it. But I can search for that stuff myself. I don't need you throwing it in my face. And if these people have their way, see, these were all industry people. If they have their way, it's going to be the same as, let's say, Philip K. Dick's vision of actual corporatocracy. We have a corporate side of things actually stronger than the actual governments. And they were pushing toward that. Now, the answer to that is not communism, because it's going to be exactly the same, folks. You think it's going to be any different? You think the people with money are just going to give up their money? You think that your little grassroots uprising, you're going to come up, your little BLM, your Antifa movement, or whatever in the world it is at the time, you think you're going to come up and come against them versus the men who are guns for hire that are willing to be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be private security? I sort of had an opportunity when I was early out of the Marine Corps. I was like 23, 24, to go to Iraq and make $120,000 a year for 6 months doing a private contract. Didn't pan out, didn't work out for me. But point is that what do you think these people were willing to pay? And when I was in the military, I was probably making, I don't know, as a NCO, as an E4, I don't know, $30,000 a year, $25,000, $30,000 a year. Private contractor, $120,000, 6 months of work. Get to have all my own gear, get to do whatever, work within a team. Completely different scenario. You think those people aren't out there? The stuff out in the streets is a joke, folks. I mean, it's horrible for what it's doing, but it's a joke as far as fighting the man. Yeah, you're fighting the man while Nike and Reebok and the NBA and the NFL and MLB and whoever else, Target and Chipotle and everybody else, Disney, is like, yeah, fight the man. It's complete, utter foolishness. But I don't know, guys. That's all I have for today. This has been AllMinucOne. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hey, guys, if you want to watch a live show, go over to DLive, TheEnds _justify_memes. That is TheEnds Justify the Memes on DLive every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. I go live with a co-host That is essentially my other channel for a live show. You can watch the replays at the ends, justify the memes. Guys, we're still working at this, so you go back and watch some of the older episodes. There's going to be tech issues. It's a deal, right? New to this whole interweb casting thing. Also, I do have a Subscribestar, if it'll load. AllMinucOne over on Subscribestar. You guys want to donate, whatever, please, feel free. It's like $5 a month. If not, whatever. I'm going to keep doing this anyways because I feel like it's necessary to do. So with all that said, folks, you all be well.